This show is sponsored by Panini America, makers of the most collectible sports cards on the planet. You know how much Ari loves them. You know how much I love them. You know we like to rip packs on this show. So we've got a pack of Prism draft picks right here, the football edition. We've also got some basketball ones that we got to open here in a little bit. But let's see what this this Prism football draft picks pack will bring us. Are you ready? You ready? You ready?
Every time you open it, you're closer to greatness, Andy.
Well, I'm close to greatness right now because there's a Joe Thomas card. I love Joe Thomas.
He's got to be your idol. Is that not your idol?
Great offensive lineman who is in incredible shape now, who dropped like 80 pounds. It looks amazing. Yeah, he's incredible. I wish he'd gotten to have a better NFL career. You know, your Browns kind of.
What do you think happened there?
Killed him. Yeah. Ty Law. Got Anthony Richardson, Gainesville's own Anthony Richardson, who is well, we'll see what happens with him in the NFL. That's the concerns we had.
They're shopping him around.
So Panini rewards points. Had a cash these in. Oh, a little Prism break. Xavier Legette, the greatest accent in the NFL. If you've not watched his videos about cleaning and cooking squirrel, you're missing out. You're missing. Trophy hunting Blake Corum. A little Brock Bowers. Johnny Wilson. Jaheim Bell, and a little rated prospect Isaiah Bond here. Isaiah Bond in his Bama uniform before he went to Texas. So
yeah, those Panini points you can put into the website and accumulate them, and then you can buy cards of your choice with the points, or even get limited edition sparkle packs, which have some pretty big hits in them. You can take a. I wanted to show you this though.
Mm-hmm.
This I hit out of. This is a Bo Nix Vitreous, which is a case hit out of Obsidian, which is the product that they just released. That card is a nuke. It's a nuke.
Very nice. Very nice.
And he's good. He's good.
He's very good. Like when Bo Nix left Auburn, could you have imagined that we'd be sitting here talking about his NFL cards being this valuable?
Yeah, I was very impressed with him last year in Denver. And, I don't know, sometimes rookie years, can deceive and people have regressions, but I thought he was much better than probably people anticipated a year ago. And Denver made the playoffs, and, people are excited about him. Also, my guy, Justin Fields, got traded to New York
JETS
to be the starter again. So I have some hope that maybe the cards that I invested in will be worth something again one day. He's a starter, so it's a step in the right direction. We'll see, teaming back up with Garrett Wilson, but Panini cards are, if the way I like to put it, it's like playing fantasy football with the entire league if you collect all of them. So I'm rooting for all these guys to be good, and just for them and also for my personal financial interests. So yeah, I love Panini, and I'm happy they're here with us.
They are tremendous. PaniniAmerica.net to start your own personal collection. You could be just surrounded by nukes like Ari is every day. Get collected now. We got some more packs this week. We're going to do some basketball packs later in the week because tournaments coming. Conference tournaments are starting. Let's go. And welcome to Andy and Ari on 3 officially. And Ari, this particular show, this particular topic came to us as we were developing our 10 most difficult schedule list late last week. There was a team that kept popping up on every difficult schedule. And it was one of those where it didn't look like the hardest game for the teams that we were talking about, but it was not one that we were guaranteeing a win for any of the teams we were talking about. And then you and I got to thinking about it, like, what if Texas A&M is really good? They could really mess up a lot of people's seasons.
Yeah, I feel like Texas A&M on an annual basis is one of the hardest teams to project, because on one hand, they have a ton of talent, but on the other, they've been in transition, and before they were in transition, they had Jimbo Fisher, and you're worried about their offense. There's always a lot of drama around the A&M football program. And I think that the hope here, and a step in the right direction with Mike Elko a year ago, was that maybe that drama would tame a little bit, and then the talent would be able to finally reach its potential. But then there's been a bunch of turnover too. So like that 2021 class that set recruiting records for most stars or most ranked players in the top 100 is like no longer like really impacting the team anymore. But that doesn't mean they don't have a great defensive line. They always do. Terry Bussey is a really good young receiver who I think is primed for a breakout year. Marcel Reed showed really big signs of stardom potentially last year. And it's like if Texas A&M turned out to be a 10-win team, then as you put it, there's a lot of teams in dire situations in the SEC that are going to have to run into them a lot of times on the road. I mean, like if you look at this right here, teams that are having pretty important seasons, Auburn, they get them at home. Florida, they get them at home. LSU, again, South Carolina, like their entire schedule is kind of just like, it's like a landmine, and you don't know whether it's going to go off or not. But if it goes off and A&M wins 10 games this year, there's going to be a lot of teams in the SEC in a world of hurt. Sorry if I stole the nut graph there, but like that's what we're talking about today.
No, that's exactly right. And that's the point I wanted to get across. And producer River and I were going through schedules beforehand. River, can you put Florida's schedule up there? So let's take a look at this, where A&M fits into Florida's schedule, because A&M's a team that beat Florida last year. This is one, if you would think if Florida is significantly better, if Florida is a potential playoff contender, that they should be able to beat Texas A&M. But look at where this game falls. They will have played at LSU, at Miami, and hosted Texas in the 3 immediate preceding weeks before they go on the road to play Texas A&M.
And as you go through these schedules, as we did last week and through the weekend, A&M is on schedules. And like you said, it didn't really move the needle either way, because it was kind of like, well, you know, if they're playing on the road, we know that's going to be a hard environment. Obviously, Kyle Field is a tough place to play. But we weren't necessarily sure that that was like an, oh my gosh, you know, meter bumper when it came to how hard your schedule was. But if A&M turns out to be good, then Florida is screwed. I'm not that they're not already, but like, it's just
especially coming off those 3 games. Like, there's a cumulative effect of having to play those 3 teams in a row.
And they get an open week between Miami and Texas, but Texas and A&M back to back.
Yeah.
And then the second half of that back to back being A&M on the road, because even if they play Texas tough, like they're going to get the crap beat out of them in that game, right? So even if they end up winning that game, like having to like respond to the emotional lift that you would get in a hypothetical win over Texas to go all the way across country on the road. Well, not all the way across country. You get it.
It's halfway.
On the road. Yeah, halfway. And Texas is big. And there goes my camera. You know, we are talking about a situation here where Florida's in deep, deep trouble. I mean, like if you look at Florida's schedule right now, Andy, if you count A&M as a tough game, and it is a tough game, if you count it as a hard game, then like the only breather that they might have on this entire thing is Mississippi State, and maybe in our case for Kentucky. Once they get into the meat of the schedule.
Yeah, it is rough. And we've talked about Florida. If they were to be as good as they hope to be, they have to earn it. And they would absolutely have to earn it. So, and this is the thing with A&M. And the thing that made it so interesting looking at A&M's schedule is when we did this 10 most difficult schedules, we kept coming up with teams, and we'd say, hey, you know, this looks like a pivotal year for this team. This looks like a coach who they've got to have a really good year. So Auburn is in this spot. Florida is in this spot. Arkansas is in this spot. LSU, Brian Kelly's fine. But if LSU goes 8-4, the natives go very restless at that point. South Carolina is expecting to have this huge season. So they're in this spot, not because Shane Beamer's in any danger or anything, but because they think this is going to be a special season. And that's one of those they probably have to win for it to be one. And it is, every game's going to be just massive in terms of stakes, not necessarily for the Aggies, but for whoever they're playing.
Yeah, well, here too, like in the chat, like the Wolverine scoop here is taking a shot at A&M, the agent of 8-4, right?
Yeah, 8-4 can still cause some people a lot of problems.
Cause some people some problems, right? Like if they win, like what was their game last year? Their game last year against Mizzou. That game caused some issues for Mizzou, I think, right? And like
They
Mizzou
destroyed Mizzou. Yeah.
like A&M has one of those in them every year. And like if that happens against Florida or LSU, you're still going to cause those problems. Now, the only thing that A&M could do to get out of the way is be 4-8, which I don't see happening either. So, you know, and here's the thing too, like we both had a lot of really great things to say about Elko last year. I think that both of us, where were you on the hire? I was really high on the hire. I thought that it was perfect for A&M to do something that wasn't splashy for the sake of it being splashy, to get somebody that they entrusted to be, what do we say about Matt Rule? Relentless competence, right? Like, and you put yourself in that position with the talent on that team, with a good culture, without drama, you put yourself in a position where you might have some success. So, like, to me, like, I think that this is a very pivotal year in A&M's development too, because, like, listen, let's be honest. If A&M does go 7-5 or 8-4, people are going to start grumbling about him. You don't get a lot of runway. So, like, it's an important year for their development and their ascension. And if you look at their roster, they're too deep. They actually have pieces in important places to be a very good football team again, especially if Marcel Reed is a star. Like, think about all the quarterbacks we're talking about this year, or coming into the year in the SEC specifically. I mean, you've got Gunnar Stockton and Lenore Sellers and DJ Lagway and Arch Manning. Like, there's a lot of names, but like, he has a lot of experience and looked very good at times last year and was very young.
Austin in the chat, the title is saying A&M will be somewhat a contender. Laugh out loud, no chance. Austin again, Texas 8-4 incoming once again. LOL. Austin, if they go 8-4, they're going to wreck somebody's world.
Also, it's possible that 8-4 against their schedule puts them on the edge of the playoff discussion. Like, I think
did last year.
I think last year people thought, well, nobody with 3 losses got in. That's never going to happen. I think that more years than not moving forward, more teams are going to get in with 3 losses than we think. Like, honestly, if you did like a simulation in NCAA football of the next 10 years, Andy, how many times out of those 10 do you think we were going to get playoff teams with 3 losses? I would say 7 out of 10 years.
Yeah. Yeah. And look, they could have been that last year, but I think it was, you know, it was the Auburn game that got them last year. That was just if they win that Auburn game, they go into the Texas game and all of a sudden would have been different story. So yeah, I think they may go 8-4, but that's the whole point of this. Like, if they go 8-4 here, there's still a problem for somebody. If Texas A&M goes 8-4, there's a very good chance they help get somebody fired. If you think about it that way, if they go 9-3, they might get 2 people fired. So that's the thing. That's the way you got to look at it. And as Ari was pointing out, A&M expects better than 8-4. They expect better than 7-5, and they're going to be mad if it's 8-4. Like, they want improvement from Mike Elko. Mike Elko is supposed to do better than Jimbo Fisher did. So that is the issue that you've got to look at here too. Is Mike Elko's under a lot of pressure to do this as well? But it is amazing to me, the intersection of all these different pivotal seasons that we're talking about. Because Ari, what did we talk about on the show on Friday last week, where we had Sam Pittman, we had Billy Napier, we talked about where Brian Kelly's at LSU, which is not in danger of getting fired, but he has to take another step with LSU.
You know, I saw yesterday too, and I'm going to get back to what you just said, Andy, the Wolverine scoop here again. Texas 8-4 hasn't been a contender since 1929. Again, anything
they
that
don't have to contend.
like we're trying to explain that, like, this isn't a podcast trying to explain to you that A&M is going to go win the national championship. That's not what we're doing here. What we're doing here is saying if 8-4 A&M, because 8-4 in the SEC most years is a pretty good year. That makes you a tough team. It makes you a tough out, and you play in one of the most menacing stadiums in college football. Even if you want to make them 8-4 right now, where are what 4 losses there means that they've lost to what? Florida, Texas, LSU,
Notre
and
Dame.
Mizzou, and Notre Dame. So that means that on their schedule, they will have beaten either Auburn and South Carolina, or Florida and South Carolina, or LSU and Florida. Like they 8
Or
and 4
Mizzou. Yeah,
wins
exactly.
over teams that need wins. That's what we're trying to say. And 8 and 4 is dangerous.
Yeah.
It's dangerous for every team that, by the way, Florida isn't a national championship team right now, we don't think, right? But they're going into a year where they need to win 9-10 games. Auburn needs to win games this year. It's a very volatile year. Like this year's coaching carousel was subdued.
Mm-hmm.
The SEC is on fire right now.
I was talking to an agent the other day, and there were 5 of those jobs available last year, and this agent thinks there might be 15 this year. Like it was very subdued for a lot of reasons, and it may be that it all comes back around.
Yeah. And also too, dare to dream. Dare to dream.
Well, right. I mean, eventually they are gonna. This has always been my take on Texas A&M, and what mystifies me about Texas A&M. Like, how do you have that dedicated fan base, that great location, that beautiful stadium that's always full and always rocking, and not fall ass backward into a 10 or 11 win season every once in a while?
Well, here's what I think is interesting, Andy, and you make this point in the college football playoff a lot. And I think it's a very astute and real point. And that point is, if you keep making the college football playoff and you keep knocking on the door, eventually you're going to break through the door, right? Like you say that all the time about teams, and it's true, right? We just saw Texas do it, okay? What about knocking on the door as a program? Like that's what A&M does. Like when you think about the investment that they have,
it's just been sitting there going like this for like 30 years.
Their knuckles are bleeding. But like as a program, what's the number one most frustrating thing for a fan if their favorite football team isn't performing? It's probably lack of investment, right? Lack of care.
Yeah.
Like there's fans out there that root for teams that don't give their program enough ammo in the offseason to at least assemble a team that could theoretically be good. A&M doesn't just give them the ammo, they're firing machine guns at this thing. I mean, like they are like, is there another program in college football that has paid more money to be good at football? And usually if you pay, I'm sure like Georgia and Ohio State and those teams, you know, have similar investment, but A&M, there isn't a check that isn't too big for them to write, for them to try to be good. And like eventually, even if you keep spending your money poorly, like it's like me and my stock portfolio. You know what my the threshold that I need for my stock, give me 3 letters, I'm in. Like that's it. But eventually, every now and then, one of those 3 letters is going to go up 80%. Most of them might go down 70, but you might, like what you're saying, is you trip into something good.
Yeah. And you think about it, it's been 13 years since the Johnny Manziel season, or the Johnny Manziel's redshirt freshman year, the year he won the Heisman. That was their first year in the SEC. They certainly outperformed expectations that year, because that was the year that, you know, Kevin Sumlin comes to SEC Media Days and basically everybody's like, how scared are you of the SEC? And he's like, what am I supposed to say to that? And then they were incredible. And I think that probably overinflated expectations in College Station for a long time, because it was like, oh, well, you can come into the SEC. And that was a good year in the SEC, because remember, Alabama's the national champ. They beat them on the road. Georgia was great. They didn't play them, but they did beat, or they lost to Florida, a Florida team that wound up going 11-1, but because they didn't really know what they had in Manziel yet, because it was the first game, because they had to cancel the Louisiana Tech game or had to move it. So like they were really good that year. And if there had been a college football playoff in 2012 that had 12 teams, Texas A&M would have been a very tough out. Would have been a scary team to draw.
Yeah, when you go back in time and you look at certain teams like that A&M team that didn't get a chance to play in the playoff, and then you like try to envision what their run could have been, like that could have been really exciting. So here's a theory that I have about A&M, and I want, you know, this is off-season theory time. Okay.
Yeah.
So you know this about me, and I think a lot of the people who listen to the show know this about me, but my wife went there. Okay. My wife grew up in Las Vegas and she wanted to go out of state. So, like, if you can picture somebody who grew up in Las Vegas, and Andy, you've met my wife, some of you, are aware of how she is. A&M is not what you would expect.
Would not be the school, I guess. No.
And people to this day, we're in our mid 30s now, and they go, "You went to A&M? Really?" Like, people are like stunned by it. But so she was going to go to UT, which is much more her speed, right? But I think something happened when she was 17 with financial aid or something that caused her to go to A&M sight unseen. And then she was going to transfer to Texas. And instead, she went there and made a bunch of friends and fell in love with A&M and stayed there. Okay. So the reason why I tell you the story is because A&M is a very wonderful place. Okay. A lot of people don't like it. And a lot of people think it's weird, right? Because they do things differently than most places do.
The people who went to A&M love A&M, I would say, more than most people love their schools.
But you can't, me being there a few times now and seeing, we went to the Stars game last week, and the person next to us was like a 50-year-old man wearing his A&M ring. Like, there's a lot of those people, okay, and who have more college pride than you'll find at most places. But you can't have this conversation without simultaneously also acknowledging that it's different, which brings me to my point that when you are bringing in a football team with the use of NIL and you're going into places in Texas and across the country that don't align with the way you do things all the time, you will find players who go to A&M and fall in love with it. But you will also go to get players that go to A&M, don't play very early, and then are looking around and are like, why am I going to a hoedown this weekend? Right? Like, for as much as you want to acknowledge that you can fall in love with the things about College Station and Texas A&M, you also have to acknowledge that it might not be for everybody. And sometimes what I question about A&M is if they spend a lot, and this is just a theory, okay? Don't throw eggs at me. I could be completely wrong. But A&M has a ton of roster turnover typically, right? And I think part of that is because of the transient nature in which they acquire some of those players. If you do it with finances and say, hey, come here with money, then you're more likely to not keep that player because they didn't choose the place for you. But then also the people who go there with thinking of the big stadium and the SEC football environment who don't play immediately might not have the same patience if it's not their type of environment that they might at another place. So the thing that I've always wondered about A&M from a consistency standpoint isn't the investment. We know the investment is there. We know that people want to go there, and we know that a lot of people enjoy it. But what about the people who don't enjoy it? What about the people who are just fish out of water who didn't have the same type of connection to the place that my wife ended up having? Is it harder to keep players on your roster at A&M developing behind the scenes there than it is at other places that are more typical college environments? And that's what I've always wondered about that place.
Yeah, and I think Mike Elko understands that, and we've had him on the show a couple times. He definitely seems to be taking a different tack than Jimbo Fisher did in terms of recruiting. Obviously, they want to get the best players. They're still going to pony up for the best players, but it seems less a chase for stars, as in the stars that we assign to players at On3, and more of this person looks like they might fit.
Right.
And I think that at a place like Texas A&M, that matters a lot. And so, Ari, we're scheduled to talk to Dabo Sweeney for tomorrow's show. Like, I don't know if there's anybody better at finding people who fit what you want in the program and the place and understanding the place than Dabo Sweeney. Like, they don't have any turnover hardly at Clemson.
Well, that's the thing too. It's like before the NIL era, if you would talk to people in recruiting departments, their number one thing, Andy, was always, well, we want to find good players, but we also want to find the ones that fit our culture, that fit our team, that fit our place. And I think that is probably becoming less and less important in terms of like how you get players on your roster.
I think A&M was under Jimbo, especially that one class. They weren't worried about fit. They weren't even worried about position balance.
Yeah.
Like they're just like, oh, 7, top 100 defensive linemen want to come in one class? Sure, come on.
Which, by the way, I know people criticize that. I would do that every year.
Offensive and defensive linemen, if you can get that many good ones, yes, you take them.
There's one position where you can take an outbalanced number of players who are really good. That's the position I would do it in. But the thing that I think is interesting is that if Elko understands that, and I think that he does, if A&M gets really good players who love College Station, who want to stay there, who want to exist in that environment, who want to develop behind the scenes and be ready in years 2 and 3, because more and more in college football, you don't have that who's waiting in the wings mentality. And like, I think A&M is a place that would serve itself well by having that waiting in the wings mentality. I mean, they have more roster turnover on an annual basis. I don't know, like if you did the numbers or Nico's did it, like would A&M on average in the portal era, be amongst the highest transient college in the entire country? And that doesn't mean they don't have good players, but do they have players who are staying in there, bought in for the long haul? Or are they cashing checks, not being happy, and then bouncing to somewhere else the first second they have an opportunity to do
I
so?
think all of the SEC schools are going to have a pretty high transient rate.
Yeah, but like
in this era,
A&M's can't be 30% more than everyone else.
No,
like I think
and that's part of Mike Elko's
with their opponents.
Yeah, that's part of Mike Elko's mandate is recruit guys out of high school who want to be there and who you can develop, as opposed to feeling like you have to get out of the portal. Because and so this year they lose Noah Thomas to Georgia. He was probably their best receiver last year. They bring in Mario Craver from Mississippi State and Casey Concepcion from NC State. So that's good. But what's better is you do it, homegrown. Now their offensive line's homegrown. Marcel Reed's homegrown. Their quarterback.
And Connor Wegman would have been, if things worked out there. Like, I mean, it's not that they don't. I mean, they recruit the hell out of Texas. So, I think it's got to be more top 10 classes of people who love A&M and less top 3 classes with people who don't.
And that is the hardest thing, I think, when you are chasing that success and you haven't gotten it yet. Because, like, it's easy for Marcus Freeman now at Notre Dame to say, this is how we do this. This is the way it works. Dabo, we were just talking about. He's been almost too stubborn at times, but it's coming back around. It seems to be working for him now. You saw what Nick Saban did. You've seen what, like, Ryan Day can just say, this is how we do this. And it works. Steve Sarkisian's found the formula that works at Texas. With Texas A&M, I think the frustrating part is they've never actually figured out the formula.
Yeah.
So they can't just say, this is how it should work at Texas A&M, because it's never actually worked the way they want it to.
Can I like blow the idea that you called me with yesterday, just to give a little bit of a taste? Like, are we going to do that?
We can do it later, but yeah, go ahead. I don't mind.
Like, it's a good thought exercise right now. So Andy and I were kicking around the idea that we got, that he got an idea from somebody, a friend of the program, about trying to identify identities of programs, right? Like, what is your identity? And it's a difficult thing to do. But then I also look at A&M and it's just like, well, here we are, let's do it. Like, what is the identity of the program there? And I think you need to, and if we can't answer it now, that's okay. We'll do it later. But I think that a lot of times too, whenever I've broken down coaches, fits and who's going to be successful, who I'd want to keep long-term, who I wouldn't, I've always thought, Andy, have an identifiable plan that you can not only stick to, but also be successful with. Right. And I think that there are certain places who have that plan and have it well. Like LSU's plan is always going to be the same. It's to recruit the hell out of Louisiana, hit Houston and the surrounding areas to bolster classes, but they are a very homegrown, elite level program with really good players. And no matter who the coach is, the blueprint has been set out for decades on how to win there. Exactly what LSU is. And I think that's what makes it one of the most attractive jobs in the country. I think you agree with me on that.
Absolutely.
The question that I have for A&M is, if you are in a place like Texas, shouldn't you have a very similar identity? and maybe you're trying to do that. But also in this state, it's much more difficult than it is in Louisiana because you have Texas, you have Texas Tech, you've got Nebraska,
You've
got
Oklahoma
LSU,
coming down.
Oklahoma, you've got Alabama. Ohio State has spent an inordinate amount of time in Texas over the course of the past 10 years. Like, it's not as easy to own your state. And just from a geographical standpoint, there's just so much more miles. There's so much more land to cover. It's not a typical state. But I think that A&M has to come up with an identity that you can summarize in a sentence or two, stick to that plan, and be successful with it. Because A&M is a wonderful place. The people that I've met through my wife who went there are wonderful people. I've enjoyed my time going there. It's different. Certainly, I think that's the charm of it. But you also can find people who identify with that environment and want to stay in that environment and want to be Aggies. And the thing that's so interesting to me is that this isn't a unique thing to just A&M. You don't think that Notre Dame has to overcome the same obstacle of being a private Catholic school? Like, and it's like, it's also funny too. Like, even if I fall back on my experience covering Ohio State, you don't think there were players that didn't want to play for Urban Meyer's like ruler mentality, who would rather play for Ryan Day? Even at places like Ohio State, that changes a little bit. Coaches, personas and personalities and coaching tactics always alter, but you want to find the players that will thrive in that environment. And, A&M has gone through a huge change, not just with their coach, because Jimbo Fisher and Mike Elko are two very different people, but you also have this culture aspect that people have to align with in order to stay in the program long term, and they have to find a plan that fits all of these things. And I'm not necessarily sure that they have that right now.
Yeah, it's up to Elko to execute that, and whether he succeeds or not is dependent on that. Now, Sailor Joe asks, are you saying this can be a dark horse team or a team that's more so on the bubble? It doesn't matter. We're saying if they're 8-4, they are messing up somebody's day for sure. Like, they may be getting Sam Pittman fired. They may be getting Billy Napier fired. They may be getting Hugh Freeze in trouble. Like, that's the thing. If their win total 7.5, if they go to 8-4, which is the big joke is A&M always goes 8-4. It means they have beaten somebody like Florida, like Auburn, like LSU, like Arkansas, like
South
Carolina, Missouri, like, because they can't go 8-4 without beating somebody like that.
Yeah. And we're also daring to dream that they go 10-2.
And if they do, wow, just watch out. Because so this idea came to me a little bit, Ari, rewatching the LSU Texas A&M game from last year, because I remembered A&M had beaten them, and I don't know why, for whatever reason, I had memory hold how it happened. And I clicked on one of those condensed versions of the game, and I had forgotten that LSU jumped out to a big lead in that game, and A&M looked terrible at first. Because remember, Connor Wegman started the game for Texas A&M. They bring Reed in at halftime, and they're a completely different offense, and LSU can't handle it. And because I was thinking more about LSU at the time, I was like, okay, this is the sort of game, like, if Brian Kelly had won this game, he's not really getting any criticism at all now.
This was the game where LSU couldn't figure out how to stop Reed from running, right?
At all.
Yeah, I remember this game, yeah.
And Garrett Nussmeier had he threw 3 interceptions, and it was one of those deals where LSU has not started giving up a bunch of sacks. Like the Florida game is where they gave up a bunch of sacks. They were still not giving up sacks in this game, but they were getting pressure. A&M was getting pressure, and Nussmeier a couple of times let that pressure goad him into throwing an interception. And that's the sort of game that you get that again, LSU fans are going crazy. If A&M beats Florida again, Florida fans are going crazy. And we just explained earlier in the show, like, what Florida has before that. It's a gauntlet before they get to play Texas A&M. If Texas A&M were to beat South Carolina, that could be a potential knock them out of the playoff contention type game. I mean, that's the thing that,
well,
they can be the spoiler, or they can be the one who gets your coach fired.
But here's the other side of the coin, and River, if you don't mind, if you could throw their schedule back up. So A&M, everybody is just assuming is going to go 8-4 in the chat, right? And I think that part of that, like I saw Josh Pate said that Texas is the #1 hated team in the country. I think more people just despise A&M. I don't know. I got to listen to a show. I didn't hear it all the way through, but like if you actually just think of like what logos drive people the most crazy, I think
A&M and Notre Dame,
Notre Dame too. I think that A&M has some of that juice, but if you're assuming that A&M is going to go 8-4, then why are not this, like assumptions being made about teams on their schedule? Make the same. If everything was true in the past, then it'll be true again. Auburn's quarterbacks are going to stink. Florida's going to be a dumpster fire. LSU's defense is going to suck, and South Carolina is going to choke at the end of the year. Let's assign everybody else's things that
we're just going to assign all the stereotypes to everybody.
Let's assign these stereotypes. Yeah. Notre Dame's not going to have enough talent, and Texas is going to lose a game that it shouldn't. Like, well, it's just like stereotype everybody. Because, like, I think that the thing that's so interesting about looking at A&M's schedule is that we are assuming that Florida's going to be great. We're assuming that LSU's defense is going to be fixed and they're going to be in the playoff with all the transfers they brought in. We're assuming that Texas is going to win the national championship or play for it next year. We're assuming that South Carolina is going to take the next logical step from a really good year next year, not return to being South Carolina. Guess what? Maybe some of those assumptions will be true. A lot of them aren't going to be true. Like a lot of them are like, is it impossible that LSU is just average again next year? Is it impossible that Notre Dame falls back into the pack? Is it impossible that South Carolina stinks? I mean, I don't know. Like,
no, I mean, if some of these things are bound to happen.
I mean, like you're looking at A&M's schedule and you're giving everybody on their schedule the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah. And
here's the thing, like A&M, like you know how you're saying that A&M can screw people up.
Mm-hmm.
It's like A&M could screw people up if like you think that A&M beats them when those teams get back on track. But what if Florida has 3 losses going into that game?
Well, that's the thing.
Screwed up.
That's what I think is so interesting about A&M is because they land on so many of these really difficult schedules.
Yeah.
And yet we're not looking at them as one of the more difficult games.
Yeah.
If they're slightly better than we think, they're a problem for all of these teams.
I think the way you need to phrase it, Andy, is that A&M on a lot of these schedules turns into a gotta have it game.
Mm-hmm.
And if they are good, they're not going to get their gotta have it games.
Yeah, they're not. Yeah, exactly. Like throw up the Auburn schedule if you got it, River. That's one I want to look at because we think Auburn's going to be better. We think Auburn can be very good this year, but they also have to contend with some pretty tough games. Now, like Baylor's not going to be easy straight out of the gate on the road on a Friday night. You got Oklahoma, you got Texas A&M, you got Georgia, Missouri, Alabama. Like this Auburn's SEC schedule is not terrible, but you kind of have to beat A&M to have the season you want, unless you're going to beat Georgia.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, maybe we'll have like an Auburn segment in the future, Andy, but like, I don't even know where to begin on like what does Hugh Freeze need to do next year is kind of
tough. And by the way, we haven't mentioned this on the show, but good luck to Hugh Freeze. Auburn put out last week, he got diagnosed with prostate cancer. He's going through treatment for it and working his way through it. So good luck with that. That's a tough deal.
I think it's important to note that I think I read that they spotted it early and there's a pretty good survival rate of people in his position. So we're wishing him and his family the best. And he's going to continue coaching while doing it too. So that's
tough.
That's a tough thing. So, good luck to you, Freeze family.
Sailor Joe, as a Texas fan, I firmly believe Texas A&M can and probably will make it if they get 9 wins, but it doesn't make the playoff. Well, they were kind of in that boat last year if they'd beaten Texas. Because Ari, the conference championship game where we talked about how the committee maybe protected the participants in the conference championship game. If A&M had beaten Texas, they'd have made the SEC title game.
Oh yeah, they were in if they beat Texas. That's why.
So they would have been. Yeah, and they could have lost to Georgia, and then they still might have made it in to the playoff. So.
Yeah. And I actually think if all things stayed the same, I mean, you can't play a different game where Carson Beck gets injured with a different team, but like, I think they could have beaten that Georgia team too, like on the right day, if they would have gotten to that point. But like A&M also too, we got to be honest. We went to that game.
They were not beating Texas.
They were not good enough last year.
Yeah.
And rightfully so. I mean, you have a first year coach trying to get things on track. Like they're not supposed to. And Texas was an excellent team. So, but like that's the thing too. It's like what's next? Like what's next for them, and that's this year. So, always fascinated by the fighting Aggies down there.
All right. Let us go to a guy we talked to. Oh, I forgot your yell leader training. Let us go to a guy we talked to last week. Last week we had Rich Rodriguez on the show, new old West Virginia coach. He had an interesting comment this week at his press conference. He's asked if he has any particular social media policies. He has one. Here it is.
No, I don't really. I mean, they're going to be on it, so it's not. I'm not banning them from. I just banning them from dancing on it. It's like, don't look. We try to have a hard edge, whatever, and you're in there, in your tights, dancing on TikTok. Ain't quite the image of our program that I want. But I told the team today, I said everything today is about trying to make everybody individual. It's all about the individual. It's all about the individual. And I said football was one of the last things that was got to be more about the team than the individual. And so I banned dancing on TikTok. I guess I did that. But anything that doesn't look like our program should look, I think it's just like, come on. Really? I mean, and I'm allowed to do that, I guess. I can have rules. Now, when they, like I said, 20 years from now, they want to be sitting in their pajamas in the basement, eating Cheetos and watching TikTok or whatever the hell, they can go at it. Smoking cannabis, whatever. I mean, knock yourself out. But, the hope or focus can be on winning football games. How about let's win the football game and not worry about winning the TikTok?
I'm just trying to imagine, like when I was college age, some of the guys I played with dancing on TikTok. Like I cannot picture it.
Did you think the word cannabis was going to come up in that at any point? That one got me.
Has anybody ever called pot cannabis? Other than cops?
Like a guest that we're going to hopefully have on the show this week, Dabo would have called it the TikTok. If you want to, when you're 20 years from now, if you want to be in your basement eating Cheetos, smoking cannabis, sounds like a lot of people I know.
It's weird because it sounds like it's one of those rich man, poor man things. There are a lot of people who are broke, unemployed or underemployed, who do spend significant amount of time sitting around in their pajamas, eating Cheetos, smoking cannabis, and looking at TikTok.
At the TikTok.
The TikTok. But there are also people who, had an IPO and sold their company who are doing the same things.
There are a lot of very successful people who smoke cannabis, eat Cheetos, and watch the TikTok.
Or maybe they're eating the gummies. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know what they're doing down in there.
The smoking part, is a little messier. So, so this got me thinking, Ari, what weirdly specific rule would you have if you were if you were a football coach or suddenly I put you in charge of like several hundred people? What oddly specific rule? Because you notice he didn't say you. It's not you can't be on TikTok. You just can't be dancing on TikTok. What oddly specific rule would you have in your organization?
Do you have one in the chamber?
I think I would ban mayonnaise from the facility, the dining facility. I would just ban it.
You need to have mayo for bulking season, though. That's an important ingredient.
There's peanut butter for that. But I understand some people like it, but I just don't. I don't want there to be a chance that it can wind up on my sandwich. So I'm banning it entirely from the facility. One rule. That's my one. You can dance on TikTok all you want, but if you want mayo, go somewhere else.
So TikTok, and I'm too old for it. I only have Instagram, so I don't have TikTok app.
Well, okay. Can I ask an old person question?
Yeah, but I think I'm in the same boat as you.
Yeah. So I have Instagram too, and I'll brain rot myself every once in a while scrolling through Instagram reels. If you've never seen Stale Cracker, his name is Justin Chason. He's a think he's like a highway patrolman in Louisiana, but he does these cooking videos. He's spectacular. Every time I hit one of his reels, I'm sucked in. So like, I get it. But like, what's the difference between that and TikTok? Because I'll ask my nieces, like, how come TikTok's cool and Instagram reels aren't? They're the same thing.
Well, all Instagram reels are old TikToks. I guess like TikTok
Right.
Yeah.
is the
Here comes a 20-something.
The 26-year-old. Yeah. From basically what I can get from it is that, and my camera's frozen, but TikTok has all the trends first. And then Instagram, and if you're in the weeds of it, Facebook will pick it up later on. But TikTok gets it first, from what I can tell.
Well,
TikTok originated
so
as
the
an
Chinese
app.
are mining our trends and data first,
They get it first.
and then the Americans get to do it.
Yep.
Isn't
Okay.
the whole thing with TikTok that like the Chinese people who have TikTok get like really smart videos of like people doing math and like being like productive, and then like all the videos that Americans get are just like girls dancing? Like I think that isn't that why they wanted to ban it? Like, why was it banned again in America?
It was a concern about because the Chinese government obviously has a hand in the companies that are founded over there.
Yeah, and they were afraid that they were feeding us garbage and feeding their TikTok.
Well, not feeding us garbage, just mining our data.
Oh, okay. I thought that there was a whole conspiracy theory that like we get the dumbest possible videos that dumb.
No, we're just that dumb. We're entertained by that.
But the thing that I think is interesting about TikTok is that it became popular because they choreographed songs and then you could dance to them and say things like you're the person. Like I think that was the
they licensed the music, so then you could have yourself
sing
lip syncing the song, which Instagram does now too, by the way. So, and in fact, if you were, so inclined, and you wanted to do, I don't know, Uncle Luke's "It's All About the You" and lip sync to that on TikTok, you could do that.
But there are two things.
That's his girlfriend doing that.
Yeah, I mean, like there's attractive women who have made millions of dollars dancing on TikTok. So, I mean, like if you think about like how important TikTok has been to a lot of the female athletes in their NIL pursuits, like I don't think that it's possible to ban it. But the question that I have for you, and I think it's a statement, maybe more than a question, is there's two things that infuriate college football fans more than anything.
Mm-hmm.
For some reason, okay, and I maybe you could put two and two together here, but they don't like seeing their male athletes dance.
Mm-hmm.
Like Carson Beck gets a lot of heat, and he's not even in most of those videos. Okay, and then two is when men paint their fingernails, as you know.
Oh, that's right.
It's kind of a train. That's kind of a trend now too. Like Ryan Williams did it, and people like went freaking crazy.
It's cool because he's doing it in the SEC, Ari. It's okay.
I mean, Ryan Williams.
That makes it manly
I
now.
don't care what anybody says. Like I don't know. Like
Caleb Williams was doing it in the Pac-12.
So my daughter is at the age now where she wants to go get pedicures with my daughter or with my wife. So like they go to the nail salon and I go because I'm a pedicure guy. I don't know if you know that. You're the guy who won't let people touch.
Oh,
their feet.
I know.
Get it? So there are two things that my wife, when I met her, introduced me to that I had never done in my 20s by myself because I'm a man and I don't think a lot of men do this on their own, which is pedicures. By the way, unbelievable, especially if you want clean feet. I do want clean feet. I think clean feet's an important part of hygiene.
I have soap at home.
No, I mean they like scrub the calluses and like get the dry skin off your feet and stuff.
I know. I've actually had one. I lost a bet and had to get one. So
was it terrible? You didn't like it?
No, it was fine.
You didn't enjoy the massage part where they rub your legs for 20 minutes?
I do not like people touching my feet who I'm not married to.
It's such a peculiar thing.
This is oddly specific rule conversation. What can I say? That's another one of my oddly specific rules.
Yeah, Andy's rule for life is never let another person touch your feet. The other thing that I got introduced to by my wife was massages. Okay. So I've never gotten a massage until I was 31 years old. Okay. Incredible. So like now, like whenever, like when we went to Mexico last week or a few weeks ago, we got a massage, couples massage. It was insane. If you're a man and you're like too proud to get a massage or a foot rub, you're missing out. You're only hurting yourself.
Well, all the athletes were talking about get massages now.
I mean, have you ever gotten a Swedish or a deep tissue massage at a spa in your like recent history?
Yeah, I need
Have you
one.
gone though? It's
I haven't.
unbelievable.
I know, like I'm not, I got nothing against it. Like I could probably use one right now, but it's funny because every athlete we're talking about gets deep tissue massages because that's part of recovery and training and everything else. So, but you're right. The dancing thing does seem to bother people. Dancing doesn't bother, like the icky shuffle. Like there was a video that Sean Cronin, the new defensive coordinator at Central Michigan, put out of teaching his kids the icky shuffle. Like the icky shuffle when I was a kid was the coolest thing in the world. When Icky Woods for the Bengals would score a touchdown and he's doing like I love that. So the dancing doesn't bother me. Like again, that would not be my oddly specific.
Remember the
rule.
Running Man trend? I don't know how.
I remember the Running Man movie.
Okay, there's where they were going like this.
Sub-Zero is just plain zero.
That was like Maryland's entire. There was like a thing. You remember this, River? I don't know if I send you a link to a YouTube video, like how hard that is. Can you play that on this? I don't even know if you can. Can you play a YouTube video? But like this was a huge trend back in what was it like 2020?
Well, you had the Harlem Shuffle trend in like 2013.
No, it was like 2017, where every college basketball locker room was like popping out of lockers and doing this dance. It was hilarious.
Oh yeah.
It was called the Running Man Challenge. You don't remember? And they were doing this with their
But see, to Rich Rodriguez's point, that's a team activity.
I guess like so you can go
coordinated to do that.
ballroom dancing.
That would be amazing.
But like the thing about TikTok and when you get kind of in murky territory, I know we're having a funny conversation. If you ban somebody from growing their online platform, that's a tricky because it's important to people. It's important to people.
It's something you're going to use. We're going to use against you in recruiting. Like if I'm Kenny Dillingham, who, by the way, speaking of dancing, Kenny Dillingham is easily the best coach in America at doing the worm, but might be the best person in America at doing the worm. If you've never seen him do the worm, it's incredible.
I mean, Andy, what about interpretive dance? It's an art form, okay?
Imagine explaining that to Rich Rodriguez if you're one of his offensive guards. Coach, it's interpretive dance.
I will say that I am not one of the more cultured people as it pertains to art. Okay. I think interpretive dance is the biggest pile of like nonsense I've ever seen. Okay, you can play the video. Play the video.
I think we've
play
lost Ari. We've lost Ari.
Why?
Oh. Oh God.
They were like, am I back?
You're back.
I don't even know why you lost me to begin with, but I'm saying like interpretive dance is a made up scam. There's no way that anybody can dance and then the person in the audience be like, they're telling a story I'm understanding right now. That's nonsense. And so is
it's like the art where someone just clearly sprayed paint all over a canvas and was like,
somebody
I'm telling
$1 for a.
This is a commentary on our society.
Well, I think that like art in general is just one big money laundering scheme, right? Like you can assign value to something that's worthless, and then you can pay a bunch of money and move money around, right? Am I wrong about that? Like, so okay, I know we're at the end of the show, but my wife wants to get nice art in our house, and when I say nice art, not like, but like art that she thinks she could be proud of. And
right.
Like there are some people that she works with who have like really expensive pieces of art and whatever. So we went to an art gallery with somebody she works with once. And we're walking around and I'm looking at these things and there's certain, and you've ever been drunk and walked around the Forum Shops in Vegas or any like mall in Vegas that has these art galleries. Some of them have like really a nice like photography that are like lit up and like are beautiful. But a lot of these like art stores is just like, it's crap. And it's $100,000. Like, and it's like $200,000 for this thing that it looks like somebody splattered. And like, the funny enough, we went, you know what I did on Saturday night? I went to an auction benefiting our school, our daughter's daycare. Okay. And it was all the parents of our daycare. And what they were doing was they took the kindergarten class, the ones, the twos, the toddlers, whatever, and they all got the class together and they made art pieces. Okay. And then they auctioned off the art pieces at the auction to the parents who wanted to have the pieces to commemorate their kids. Okay. Cute idea. The art that these kids did looked the exact same to me as something that you would find in an art gallery for $1 million. And don't get me started on what people were paying for these at the auction. But like, it was like,
but at least you knew what they were going toward.
Yeah, it was going towards the school and supplies and stuff. It was a nice gesture.
Yeah.
But like, I just don't get it. And like, I mean, I get like, maybe there's people in art that watch football and go, why do you watch this? Like, I understand everybody's got different. I do not understand art and what makes it so expensive, especially when it looks so random and like, just like, oh, I've got paint. Ugh.
As Nathan, our friend, says, Ari's an uncultured schmuck, but he ain't wrong.
I mean, I'm uncultured.
Also, Dot in the chat. I haven't seen Dot in a while. What up, y'all? It's been a minute. Ohio State still owns you peasant programs, though.
Where's he been?
I don't know, but I love that when as soon as Dot shows up, he's a million miles an hour. I do immediately
feel like if your team wins the national championship, like there are two ways you can go with it. One where it's like, oh, well, I don't have to consume media anymore. We're the champs. I got it. But like also too, like the entire point of being a college football fan is to revel in the victory and like roll in everyone's faces. So Dot, you need to show up more often and smear the chat.
And Dot had this energy right after they'd lost to Michigan, before anybody knew they were going to go on that run. So Dot has kept the same energy the entire time, which I truly appreciate.
He was getting the chat going back like in the days when it was
oh yeah, just poking the Michigan fans. Now, another example of keeping the same energy, John Calipari. He's made his feelings known on conference tournaments, but as we embark on a week of conference tournaments, by the way, congratulations to Wofford on your SoCon title. You're in the NCAA tournament. But the SEC tournament starting, the ACC tournament starting, Big Ten tournament, all the big conference tournaments are this week. John Calipari was on Hogs Plus talking about conference tournaments and made no bones about how he feels.
I don't care about the conference tournament, which is why we won it so many times, because I could care less. The tournament that matters is the NCAA tournament. Now, you play that tournament to get the best seed you can get. And if you're going to get to the finals, win. Or don't go to the finals and lose because you're exhausted and you got to play on Tuesday or Wednesday. So I'm like, let's play well and try to improve our seed.
So that is one of the funny, like when I was a beat writer and I had to cover conference tournaments, like you could kind of see on a coach's face when his team won in the quarterfinals of the conference tournament, like maybe on a buzzer beater, that he was like, ugh. He's like, this is going to carry us to a win in the semis. Then we're going to play in the final. And then it's going to be a Sunday. And then we're going to draw a Thursday NCAA tournament game. This is going to suck. Like you can tell.
I think it's an interesting thing because it kind of like reminds me a little bit of like college football and like what I was.
Rhett Lashley talking to us before the conference championship games.
If you're going to take, because conference championship or conference tournaments in college basketball, and I remember covering them, it stinks as a reporter because it's a lot of work and it's always really cold where you're going. But it like, if you are like down on the notion of improving your seed, then like, again, seeding in the NCAA tournament, like how much of a difference is it between being a 4 and a 7? Like, and then like also too,
even a run through the conference tournament may not push you up that many seed lines. Like it's not,
which is why I was surprised that seeding moved the needle as much as it did in football, especially considering the fact that it is kind of random. It's like, you want to improve your seed, but in football specifically, improving your seed might mean you have a harder path. Yeah. Which then renders all these extra tournaments kind of pointless, and then of course you have tread and wear and tear on your body.
Here's Rhett Lashley.
If the worst happens this year, do you think coaches will start to consider doing crazy things like not playing or benching players or doing things?
If our team all got COVID today and didn't play, we're in.
Wow.
We're in, right? We don't have another data point to drop us below anybody that's behind us.
Based on what happened in 2020, that's how it would go. Yeah.
I think if you open up that door, you're going to see a lot of people do a lot of crazy things. Yes, we're not going to. We're going to go play in Charlotte, and we're going to try to compete for our championship because that's the right thing to do. That's what competitors do. We value an opportunity to share the field with someone like Clemson, a fantastic team, and try to do something special. And so I just, like I said, I'm going to choose to believe that on Sunday that the right thing will be done as well on the other end.
And they got in, even though they lost. But his concerns were legitimate. And it's interesting because we do have years of data with the basketball conference tournaments and what this means. Steve in San Antonio asks, isn't Arkansas on the bubble? They are on the bubble, but I think they're feeling fairly comfortable right now.
No, I know, but when you're on the bubble, this is an important time. So it's kind of weird.
They're all the projections have them as being in right now.
Still.
Yeah. So
being on the bubble, this is tournament time.
Yeah. It might help to win one game. I don't know if you want to hang out in Nashville till Sunday. That's the key there. Like, yeah. And that's what Calipari's saying. Like, do you really want to put that wear on your body when?
But also, too, they're like really well conditioned 21-year-old kids. Like 5 days is a lot of time to recover. Like even if you play a basketball game from every day and from now until Sunday, and then you have 5 days off, isn't that enough time to be rested for the tournament? Like I don't.
Well, you might only have 4 because like if you play in the SEC tournament finals, that's Sunday mid-afternoon. You could have the straight out of the gate noon Eastern tip on Thursday.
I know, but Monday,
in the NCAA tournament, that's so fun.
A lot of time for a 21-year-old kid in perfect condition to get ready for a basketball game. I don't know. And also, too, if you're on the bubble and you play in the SEC conference championship game, then you might improve your seed by 5 or 6 and then have a much easier path. I actually think that it makes sense to try to win it. But I don't know anything about basketball either, so I don't know. Maybe.
And the problem is getting to the final in the last few years has not demonstrably improved seeding and has also not necessarily gotten you in. There was Texas A&M a few years ago that got to the SEC tournament final and then didn't get in, and it was like, what the hell was the point of all this?
That's exactly what I was going to say. 2 years ago, whenever 2022, they made that run in Tampa, and they didn't even get in.
Yep. So that's why. It all comes back to Texas A&M. That's what it does. Hey, Ari, big show tomorrow. We are scheduled to interview Dabo Swinney, the Clemson head coach, who we are very high on Clemson this year, but we have been very critical of some of Dabo's decisions as the sport has evolved. It feels like it's coming back around, and he's in a good spot right now. So we might see if he takes a victory lap on us. It's entirely possible, but excited to talk to him and excited to bring it to you tomorrow. So we will talk to you tomorrow.